everyone, and welcome to this edition of Stream On. I'm Jim Williams, your host. Now, we're in June, and we're getting closer to the summer, which is great news for everyone. More people are being vaccinated. Continued great news. COVID is hopefully we're on the other side, which means that we're going to start going to concerts. We're going to start going back to plays and community theater. It's also great to hear this week that the boss, Bruce Springsteen, and a number of other shows will get ramped up, and Bruce will be the first, but Broadway will be back in full force come September. And, when you think about Broadway here, as you guys know, we think about Stu and Bonnie Comley, who run the brilliant Broadway HD. Now, if you're not familiar with it, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, it's one of the greatest places if you're a fan of theater, because they have got digital captures of some of the greatest plays of all time, some plays you would never have heard of before, but you're going to find out, wait a minute, these are hidden gems. They've got some amazing stuff going on. So as we get ready to head back to Broadway in the fall, and for some of you lucky enough to grab tickets to see the boss this summer, we, of course, have to check in with our experts and our pals, Bonnie and Stu. Guys, great to have you back, Stu. I know it's been a long layoff. I know it's been tough on so many people, but it's just great to hear that Broadway's coming back.
Well, definitely, as far as Broadway is concerned, they are putting up their own protocols of safety so the audience feels really comfortable in coming in. Vaccinations are, in some cases, imperative. And certainly, I've never seen such excitement among the performers and the musicians. I mean, they can't wait to get back to work, but you can't just rush. So, as you know, in September, some of the shows are starting to open. Hadestown in early September, previews that'll start. So we're kind of excited about that. And I think that going into this new world, this new post-pandemic era, they are all much more conducive and looking forward to having their shows captured. So I think there's a lot of excitement on our part from that.
That's fantastic news. I think one of the things that we learned during the pandemic, and, it's good that we can actually learn some good things from the pandemic, is that when Disney Plus debuted Hamilton, which is the digital capture of Hamilton, that suddenly their subscriptions skyrocketed. And I think that bodes well exactly for what Broadway HD is going forward with.
Oh, yes, and now people understand exactly what a digital capture is. It's not a show. It's not a traditional movie. It's a capture, which is a hybrid art form.
It really legitimized what we've been doing all these years. It even created new categories. And they kind of, before they used to put us in the live awards winners, like a Grammy Awards production, they're treating it as a TV film.
Well, it's what it was. I mean, it was better than a movie and had everything that you needed from the play. So it was, as you say, it's a hybrid, but it had the best of both worlds, because there were some camera angles there which I'm quite sure they wouldn't have had under normal circumstances.
Well,
but
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But let's say when we shoot something, we not only just we shoot from 18 different angles in the theater, as well as point shots and close-up shots. So we're able to get not only the best seats in the house all over, but the additional ones as this new art form develops.
Right. And the one that I thought was quite interesting that they used in Hamilton was the camera that shot from the roof or the ceiling or the lighting grid and shot directly down. They didn't use it much, but it gave you a perspective of what was moving and how things were moving.
Well, the thing that you point out with that is we get this question a lot. Oh, how much does it cost to do a digital capture? And that's question is if you went to somebody and say, how much does it cost to make a movie? You can,
Right.
people have been very successful with making a movie with their cell phone,
Right.
and had, gigantic studio, $50 million, $200 movies that never made their
Right.
money back. So it's a strange question to be presented with, because it really isn't a one size fits all. The range of capture is, again, if we're talking about on Broadway, is it a musical, and how big is the cast? And the more it gets more expensive, you want to put a camera or a drone in the middle of the theater and try and capture the overhead shots kind of thing. For everything else, is that really necessary? If that makes did that help tell the story better, or was it just a gimmick? But in that sense, like an added expense that somebody else wouldn't take because they're not going to see their money back on that.
Right.
The whole concept of using cameras and shows, and you mentioned a drone. If you remember the show Network that was on Broadway?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, one of the exciting parts of the show is even though it was about because it was about a TV network, they actually with a camera, the live actors on the street in real time doing a scene in front of the theater. An amazing combination of technology and live theater to tell the story that enhanced it and was part of it. That was very exciting.
Well, they embraced it, and I know it, Bonnie, what you're talking about, because for over 40 years I did live sports and entertainment, like a concert. I would do the Police in concert, or something, where an NFL game or an NBA game. And people would say, well, how much does it cost to do an NBA game versus, an NFL game? I said, well, first of all, one's indoors and one's outdoors. Number two, it depends on how many cameras the network allows you to have. So it can cost anywhere from $45,000 to $100,000. It just depends on what you can use, and how elaborate a production you're allowed to budget, and it is what it is.
And then what are you doing with it? What do you see this doing? Is this a movie? And people will look and they'll say, what we've heard is to shoot Hamilton, to do the digital capture, it was 10 to 12 million, and that what we've read is that Disney paid 75 million for it. So, great. So that was $65 million that they made, which is amazing. But there's no other, equivalent really to Hamilton, for one thing. And if you did those sort of, it cost $1 million to shoot the digital capture, and you sold it to Netflix for $2 million, kind of thing, like, it's $1 million that you made. But I don't think that that's the measuring stick. I think that with digital capture, you really have to look at the value that is added to the brand. And so with Hamilton is now part of the Disney brand. So for them to spend $75 million for that, they've added, as you pointed out, the subscriptions to Disney Plus went, your term, I think, was through the roof.
Right.
So it's their value add to their subscription service is almost immeasurable, and will be for a very long time.
Right.
I think that's the value of digital captures. It's not, well, it cost $1 million to do, and we sold it for $1.5 million, and therefore it equals 500,000. That's not the way to look at it. It's what is the value added to a brand, and that is really hard to track sometimes, in the same way that if you do a commercial on a sports event, you put your Volvo car commercial in the middle of the NBA game. Is that is what do you get for it? And sometimes you can track it immediately, but then there's also a much longer life. And does that commercial carry on? And how many impressions? And then you get into the whole marketing of, the terminology and the analytics that go around that.
Mhm.
But it's really hard to track, and it's something that keeps moving. So it's not a finite, oh, this is what it, you might be able to say this is what came in, or this was the notice on this particular day, but I don't think that's where it ends. And when you're looking at, and a lot of people have a lot of pushback with Stu and myself when we talk about even just Broadway shows,
Right.
that we are commercial producers, which means that we live and die on, the tickets that are sold.
Sure,
So
100%.
look at, so, it should be storytelling. It should be artful. It should be art, but it's still, once you put a price tag on something, you've crossed over into the commercial territory. And that is very hard for a lot of people to accept. And I think that when you're selling a show on Broadway, it's a brand. It's a commercial piece of,
Right.
It's a product. And people sort of push back on that. It's all about the ticket sales. Well, yeah, because if you don't get the, if you're not making money, then that piece of art is not going to last very long. And it's not going to have a life after it leaves Broadway either. So, those kinds of things get very, very difficult to talk about because people don't want to compare art to a commercial product.
Of course, when you produce a commercial show, you're walking that fine line where you want to create something that's culturally, additive, but you've got to make money on it because it's the commercial theater.
Right.
That's why it's between nonprofit or as Jerry Schoenfeld used to say, taxable theater versus the non-taxable theater.
Well, I had to your point, Bonnie. First of all, on the Disney situation, right? It's a lost leader. Okay, $75 million to establish a Disney Plus brand that brings you close to 100 million subscribers, okay, is an investment they'll make every day of the week, okay? Because the Disney platform is so massive that a $75 million investment is, a drop. I know it's seriously crazy to say this, but it's a drop in the bucket to what Disney will make off of Disney Plus going forward. And when you can up that subscription base to 100 million people from 0 to 100 million in 5 months, you've done something that, advances the brand. But also, to your point, living my life in commercial television, and always fighting against the PBS side, I didn't, it was like, well, they can do this without commercials. And you're like, well, I understand that, but they also will have underwriters. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a commercial and an underwriter? Okay. They're both spending money on this. It's just that we're putting ours into the show and they are putting theirs before and after the show.
Well, I think a lot of it, to your PBS point, to like, well, we do it for free, but there's these underwriters, sponsors, or somebody's getting a tax break because they donated to PBS. So I think a lot of it is around semantics. So your earlier statement that buying Hamilton for $75 million for Disney is a lost leader. Let's not talk about it as being a lost leader. Let's talk about it. It's a marketing expense.
Oh,
that's what it is.
Yes.
It's not a lost leader.
Yeah.
Nothing, that you're pointing out. There's nothing. They didn't lose money in any step there.
No.
So to say, to associate loss with any of that.
I apologize.
No, because it's how everyone talks about it. And Stu and I are pushing back on this all the time with people, well, how much is it going to cost and how much is it going to make? That's not the way to frame it.
No, you can't.
Or it's a lost leader. It's not. It's a marketing expense. And what do you have to spend in your marketing? What are you going to, how are you going to see results to that? That's the way to frame these things. And that's the way that, digital capture has to be framed with any of this as well. That it's not how much did it cost, how much is it going to make? I think it's just changing the vocabulary around it and how we present it within the industry that's going to move these digital captures forward. That it's just we're stuck in how we used to talk about it. And even with digital captures, they just used to go to PBS. there was no other outlet because it was considered so high art and culture that it was no other outlet for it.
Right.
I think in the case of Disney, you should also look at the big picture. They didn't only get Hamilton. They got Lin-Manuel and everything with him. They got him to be in Mary Poppins. They're going to be supporting a lot of other projects he's working on.
Well, Into the Heights, it starts this week.
Yeah. So they have this whole package with him going forward. And I believe they bought all the rights to it, so they can probably play the music in the Disney parks from here till the end of time.
Right. They also, I mean, to their credit, they also did a significant deal with Marvel and with of course with George Lucas and the Star Wars people.
Yeah.
So yes, Bonnie's, you're 100% on the marketing aspect of it, and I think that what it did, and let me see if this is a better way of putting it, it mainstreamed digital so that people now get what a digital capture looks like.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I might also add that it opened up categories of recognition for award shows.
Right.
With this before, the critics the Critics Choice Awards, I think, was opened up.
Yeah.
And another one,
the Golden Globes.
And
the Globes, right.
Where there wasn't a category before, so this has been a big help for us.
And there used to be categories in the Emmys that were, that these PBS, PBS distributed great performances, digital captures or film performances of Broadway shows were in these categories, but they were in categories that are so wordy that they included, there's not that many digital captures. There weren't, when PBS was the only distribution outlet for it, and there's still not, in my opinion, not enough of them done. So there was no category that was recognized because it went to television, so it was an Emmy. It wasn't considered for an Academy Award or the Golden Globes because they didn't go into movie theaters, which is now all up in the air how we award things, because we used to, these awards were based on what was the first distribution window. So if you went into a movie theater, you were eligible for the Academy Awards or the Golden Globes. But then, then came the power of Amazon and Netflix, and streaming used to be not in these award categories that were eligible for television because it had to be broadcast or it had to be cable. So these lines are blurring now with where, the movies that are opening, In the Heights is opening simultaneously in theaters and streaming at the same time. So where does that, suddenly like, okay, we're like, how do you define that again? But with the Golden Globes recognizing Hamilton as a film up against other, I'm air quoting, real films, because we've been told so many times that digital captures are not real movies, in my air quotes again. So those lines are blurring, but with the recognition of awards comes financial rewards because you get recognized in that way. That was the whole purpose of awards, right? You're supposed to reward excellence, but the why we all compete with them is for the recognition that then turns into financial somewhere down the line, hopefully.
I mean, that's basically what put Netflix on the map when they were able to put House of Cards, create an original series for themselves that gave them, set them apart from everyone else and gave them the awards. I mean, they ran away with several awards that year and really put them on the map. Well,
to your point, Stu, the last Emmy Awards, not between the streaming services, meaning Netflix, Amazon, HBO Max now, Disney Plus, there were over 100 nominations from streaming services. And it's the first time in recent history where HBO was considered a dark horse in the Emmys because so many shows were Netflix and Amazon produced shows.
Yeah, it's amazing how times have changed. I mean, I remember when HBO was the leader and the broadcast networks were the ones that were losing out.
Mm-hmm. You know, and it's it's the ability now with what you guys do with Broadway HD is you're bringing content to a mass audience who may never have had an opportunity to see it. And
absolutely on a global scale,
right,
on a next scale.
And the folks at Netflix and Amazon, their theory of the case, which is a good theory of the case, is we'll put this out and people will we'll put the movie out simultaneously with the day that we stream it, because people will at some point in time want to see this film. Why would we hide it from our streaming customers? Because at the end of the day, we want to expand our subscriber base. And by doing it, and then there's some people, like with Wonder Woman, when it came out on HBO Max, it was one thing to watch it on television, but there'll be people who went to the movie theaters because it's a movie that's because of the special effects is made to be seen in a major, cinema, not necessarily on a flat screen television.
Oh, absolutely. And I think going forward, if I can conjecture, the movie industry is going to be changed drastically as the regular movie houses will have to be competing with staying at home and watching it on your home big screen,
Right.
and only the tentpole movies, as you said, the big, the In the Heights, the James Bond, you can see it on a big screen in 3D and IMAX. That
Right.
becomes a station, or have have dinner served while you're watching. It's going to be more of an experience, an event. Just I'm going to go out to see something.
Right. It's a brave new world, and in some regards, the pandemic has pushed us in that direction.
And there comes innovation.
Yeah.
But the whole point of technology, right, is to do more with less. So we can bring more Broadway shows to people that can't get to the Broadway theaters. You can bring more movies to people that can't get to the movie theaters. That's the power of technology. And that's what, the people that want to keep the, and it makes it more affordable. I mean, people hate to hear that, but, again, the economics of doing more with less is you're doing more and bringing more to people, and you can make it more affordable. And that's, so you'll find that these movie experiences that Stu's talking about are more of a VIP, experience that they're going to say, it's economical to make it more expensive. That's what, that's how it's going to work financially, is if we raise these ticket prices and have it be more exclusive, and the streaming is going to go for the everyone. The every person. And that's, the same with Broadway, is that was always the case. But with Broadway, the special thing that we bring to it, and that what we've always believed, is that the digital online streaming version of theater is the gateway to the live experience. If you look at, pre-pandemic, we have 350 million people in the United States.
Right.
In a typical year, 85% of those 350 million would go to the movie theater to see some movie or other, whereas only 15% of that population goes to see a live theater experience. I mean, we're just not a theater-going culture, but we're becoming one. And in the pandemic, the digital theater that just popped up everywhere, because when the pandemic hit, some theaters decided that they would mothball. They were just going to let go of everybody, just, keep a porter in the building to maintain the pipes or whatever it was. And everybody was going to be furloughed or let go. And there was other ones that decided that they were going to suddenly overnight become a movie studio, a TV studio. And it's so hard to be a movie or a TV studio when that's what your business was. So now to try and do that when that wasn't what your business, you had no experience doing that, it was really uphill. But I think that what the pandemic has showed everyone is that digital can be additive to the live stage shows. And that's the whole power of Broadway HD. That's always what we've been doing. We pop up in the middle of the pandemic and say, oh my God, here's an opportunity to exploit this situation.
Right.
We're going into our 6th year of serving a globally underserved audience with this content, of saying we've got full-length stage plays and musicals. We've got over 300 of them that are, as long as you can get to the internet, you can see these, at a price point that is lower than, for the entire, an annual subscription to Broadway HD is $100. The average price to a Broadway musical, one seat, is $125.
Right.
So, we've been, bringing down the barriers of the economics, bringing down the barriers of just any sort of geography. And, in the past year, who knew? The reason before that people couldn't get to the theater were very different than, prior to that, what the reasons why people couldn't get to the theater. But we've always said that if you can't get to the theater, then get to Broadway HD. We'll bring the show to you. And that was the purpose. And I think that, the last year has proven to so many people that seeing a digital version of theater doesn't make them not want to go to the theater. It's quite the opposite. It makes them want to get out there and be part of that, in the moment, in that live setting experience. They're hungry for it. And that's what the best kind of captures are, is that they show, elements. They try to recreate what the experience is of going to the theater. It's not a movie. It's, let me, I want to be part of that. And I think that that's what we've all seen. And these theater companies that are around the country that are now doing more for digital engagement. But I think what they're learning is it's just much more economical for them to do short form. So these talk backs, these, sort of, it's almost like a book club that you talk about theater, or you bring in an expert on Shakespeare, or on, certain playwrights, or on composers, and you have conversations around that, and that you may be watching the digital piece on Broadway HD, or you're watching Hamilton on Disney, and then talking about the themes in it, or the direction, those kinds of things. And I think that digital engagement will be the piece that is sustainable for theater companies around the country, around the world. And the full-length digital captures of the bigger shows is going to be left to the bigger, the Broadway HD, the Disneys, the Netflixes, the Amazons, those ones will do that. But the one-person show, or the smaller, local productions can stream to their own, so you're like putting it out there on the internet, but you're being localized with it, because people are supporting their local theater by doing, those kinds of live streams or captures. And it'll be probably more live streams from the local theater company that will be out there, because during the pandemic, the IP holders, the rights holders for these shows made concessions and said, during the pandemic, we'll allow these live streams of shows that they were never going to allow before.
Right.
And they're all learning how to sustain it, how to make money from it going forward.
Well, also to your point, during the pandemic, we did watch parties, and I would host the watch parties on Zoom, and we would watch a show, and then I would have with me one of the stars from the show, or one of the showrunners or writers, and we would talk through, what went into the show, and what people were then able to ask questions, and to really get some instant feedback. And it was a lovely opportunity to share some behind the scenes in real time with a group of people who, as you said, is like a book club. Well, they would come, we would do it, and we would have fun talking about it, and not only just talking about it in an abstract, but talking about it with the people who actually were involved in it.
Yeah, so it makes it this micro, digital, intimate group that can that then have a conversation, unlike something that's just watching and you're not interacting with. So you're talking about a Zoom that, that everybody within the Zoom, I mean, whoever's the leader, can mute. Right. But, you can actually have discussions, dialogue. It's a back and forth with an expert pointing out, or somebody associated with it, that's a much more intimate experience. And I think that that's one of the things that people are realizing, like, oh, that we weren't doing that before. We were doing that in person. So for theater, how that translates is we used to have exclusive VIP group that would go for talkback after a show, that you get to talk to the composer or some of the actors. And that would be, again, you're going to go to get something for dinner before the show, at 6 to 8, and then the show starts at 8, and it goes till 10, and then you have to wait for the audience to clear. So at 10:30, this a cast member would come out and talk to you for half an hour. So your evening goes from like 5:30 to get there till 11:30 at night, which is this huge commitment. You've got 5 or 6 hours of your day devoted to that. And it was exciting, and it was a VIP thing, and it wasn't that great. But I think so many theaters are realizing, oh, you know what? We could actually do that by Zoom. So people go see the show, and the next day or in that month, you can have a conversation at Roundabout of like, everybody that saw She Loves Me this month, let's get together on Zoom, and talk about what that was like. And we're going to bring in Laura Benanti, or, like that kind of digital engagement that makes it much more personal and localized. And those are the things that will sustain, because it's going to be very hard for people to do the full out digital captures of every single show. And it's not going to be something that the rights holders want, is to allow every single production to be captured. They might be able to live stream here and there, but they're not going to be able to capture it. So, I mean, those kinds of things have changed over the pandemic, and we're realizing how important that is to create community around each of these local theaters, and how you can do it digitally. There's less, if none now, of pushback for people when you say you want to do something that's technology oriented around a theater piece.
Special thanks to our special guests. And that, of course, is Stewart Lane and Bonnie Comley, the two people behind the outstanding streaming service Broadway HD. Please check it out. All the information on Broadway HD is in our show box below. We will return right after these words from BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
At BMW, we know leaving the road wasn't easy, but anticipating our return taught us to appreciate every drive. The exhilaration of the ultimate adventure. Moments spent with your favorite co-pilots. And the freedom to explore just because. Our time to rejoin the road is finally here.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, if you're not one of the over 75,000 people who've taken the time to download and subscribe to our podcast worldwide, well, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, we make it simple. It's free. You can find us at the Apple Podcast Store. Same thing over at Google Play. You can find us at Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, as well as iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Pandora, and Amazon Music, just to name a few. Now, if you have an assistant device like, let's say Google or Alexa or even Siri from the Apple family, all you have to do is ask them to play the latest edition of Stream On with Jim Williams, and guess what? They'll do it for you. Now, if after all that you still can't find us, not a problem. Pull out the old Google machine, type in Stream On with Jim Williams, hit the favorite button or the subscribe button, and each week you're going to get a brand new edition of the podcast sent directly to your phone, your tablet, or to both. So please do that today. We'd greatly appreciate it if you would, okay? And like I said, you'll be part of our worldwide family, which just continues to grow every week, and we couldn't be happier. And by the way, once you get to us, you know that it's important, and all the information is in the show box below, but we love to hear from you. And you hit us up on Twitter, you hit us up on Instagram, some of you email us. Many times, the information you give us about what you're watching, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear us talk about, what from topic standpoints, as well as some of the shows that you would like us to showcase. We've used, as you know, right here on the show. So it's a very interactive and a very loving group of people that we have here as partners of our family. That's why we want you to join it, okay? So join us soon, and do not hesitate to let us know what you're thinking, all right, because we really enjoy the feedback. So with this week's highlights, well, HBO Max has their big debut of the Tony-winning musical that made Lin-Manuel Miranda a household name. The film version of In the Heights is right now on HBO Max. I have not yet seen it. I'm looking forward to it over the weekend. Netflix has Gina Rodriguez's thriller Awake, which is basically their runaway hit this week on Netflix, so check that out. Amazon Prime has a couple of popular shows which are getting series 2. Popular series Flack is back, as well as the debut of Solos, both of which are, of course, definitely worthy of checking out. Disney Plus, red hot with Loki. The folks at Marvel Studios have done quite well, and Loki continues to be the red hot hit over there. Disney, also on Disney Plus, has Raya, the Final Dragon, which is racking up some big numbers too. So lots to see on Disney Plus. Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson in the buddy comedy The Hustle is on Paramount Plus. Discovery Plus this week has Chopped: The Next Generation. If you haven't seen it, it's a very cool show. Peacock, tons of sports this week, from Olympic swimming trials to IndyCar racing from Detroit. So that's just a little bit of what you can get streaming-wise this week. By all means, hit us up if there's anything that you're watching that you think we should be. Okay? So, also, don't forget Broadway HD. We talked about that with Bonnie and Stu. All the great content, all that information is in the show box below. So, thank you for joining us this week, and for all of the folks behind the scenes who work so hard on Stream On. We thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Stream On. Be safe. Have a wonderful weekend.